Hi, everyone. This is the July 19th Jupyter IPython weekly quick dev meeting. And we have a slightly smaller crowd than usual, but we can try to keep it small. A few folks on the team left notes on the hackpad, but they can't make it. And so, as usual, we'll try to just bring up whatever people actually want to discuss rather than reading from the hackpad. And if it's short, that's fine. I missed SciPy. I know that the project had a big presence at SciPy last week. I couldn't make it. Thomas wasn't there either, but I know many on the call were there. And from what I've heard, it went very well. The project was very well represented. I want to thank everyone on the team who participated and sort of made us proud. And hopefully I'll make it next year. This time I just had a conflict. Anyway, Carol is the first on the agenda, but she can't join us, so we'll leave her notes. We'll leave her notes there. Pete, I think you're next up. I don't know if you want to go ahead.
Sure. I don't think there's anything else other than what's there in the hackpad. Just thanks to Carol, we put together the. There we go. Put together the read the doc site for the dashboards layout extension, which addresses, I think, the concern you had, Fernando, last time we met here. So it should be all set. We put out Kernel Gateway 1.0 last Friday, and there's clearly the enhancement proposals still out. Any feedback people have would be great. And then we have that bundler API pull request against the notebooks I think Mitten took a look at, but more feedback welcome. That's all for now. Cool.
Gino.
Yeah, so I think the main item worth mentioning, I've been out on vacation for the past 2 weeks, so I'm getting back into the speed of things, but we started some work a few weeks back, and we just recently moved it on their and repo, the declarative widgets sub repo in the incubator section. It's about it's a widget. It's a declarative widget that allows you to tie it to a data frame, Pandas, Spark, etc. And it basically explodes into this Explore widget that allows you to do interactive queries and visualize different types of visuals and set up those visuals. So if you guys have seen Caravelle from the Airbnb guys that have like a nice web tool for doing analysis, it's kind of in the vein of that, where you basically drop this thing, point it to some data, and you can visualize it and query it to some certain degree. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do is make that a very rich widget that you can bring in. We have a way of bringing it with declarative markup, or we have some Python, Scala, and R bindings that you just run a function called explore, give it a data frame, and then it explodes into the widget. Now the next level is that we want the widget to be able to tie to other declarative widgets through selection and sort. So we're going to enable that same support. So you can basically think about a scenario where you have some data in whatever data frame flavor, R, Pandas, Spark. Then you drop this Explore widget. You do interactive filtering and group bys with the UI. You select the visualization, and then you can actually select on a pie wedge or on a bar chart and tie that over to an extra island of declarative widgetry and keep going along doing your notebook. So I'm going to create a screen cap, and I'll post it on the Hackpack or maybe somewhere in the README and then point to it so you guys can take a look at the progress we made so far.
Very cool. So this makes me think of something that is kind of a question both for you guys, but also sort of for Steve and Chris and Darian, which is to what extent is it now easy on Lab to actually say, I want this particular widget to pop out? I know that the widgets are not fully working yet, kind of the existing widgets. There's still a few kinks that need to be ironed. But to what extent are we close to being able to say, I want one of these things actually not inline in the notebook, but displayed on a separate, I think Chris used the word property the other day. That may be the best word that we have right now, on a separate thingy, right, on a separate sub-tab in Lab, while maintaining communication with the kernel, so that taking advantage of the Lab real estate and the Lab UI, these things could then be presented and managed separately in views, even though they remain connected via the comms in the background, and they do remain attached to the underlying kernel and the same namespace of the kernel.
Yeah, so as luck would have it, we just merged something that does exactly that today. I'm going to paste the issue in the chat. There's a GIF there for everybody to look at.
Cool.
And it makes output areas draggable, so you can drag and drop an output area into a separate pane, and everything remains live.
Very cool.
So the answer to that was, it was really easy. It was written by somebody at SciPy in about 2 hours who had never used either lab or TypeScript before.
Oh, nice. Gino, are you looking at that?
Yeah, that's a nice solution because that means we don't have to do anything. It just works, right?
Perfect. By the way, Chris and I have not coordinated this. This was not staged.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and that's it from my side. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this is exactly what the kinds of things that we wanted to be to kind of enable and make possible. Thanks so much, Chris. Chris, well, I can do it. I'll just paste that into the.
Well, I guess we should go ahead and give a shout out to Dan Allen, since this is recorded on YouTube. He's the guy that did all the work. I just helped him along with a couple issues. So.
And so, who?
Dan Allen. He works with Tom Caswell at that place out on Long Island.
Brookhaven.
Brookhaven, yeah.
Oh, cool, excellent. That's wonderful. I don't think I've ever met Dan, but it's great. He was participating at SciPy, and this was actually done during the sprints.
Yep.
He's done several other cool things, and he and I were just talking about an HDF5 file viewer as well. He's really interested in making an HDF5 file viewer.
Okay, well, this actually that actually does make me think that it might be a good idea, and I don't know if anyone was keeping track, but I think it would be worthwhile drafting a very simple blog post in the next week or two that is a little summary of the things that, even if they're prototypes, even things like this, even if they're small things, the things that got done as part of the kind of joint activity during SciPy, either at the sprints or maybe little hacks and little things that even the team did. I know that there's a lot of hacking that happens in the nice big leather couches in the AT&T Center. A lot gets done on those couches, and so having a little summary of highlights of that would be very nice.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that there will be a temptation to create new plugins or viewers, like a lot of them, and because the object model of Jupyter Lab allows it, but if we get diverted into this sort of thing and we do a lot of this, it will take more time to reach feature parity in the notebook itself, and I see a danger there.
I'm not tagging. I'm being fairly disciplined about tagging with 0.90 everything that I actually think that we should be working on. So, but something like this, where it's an external contributor and they got a chance to work on something new, is.
Oh, the Dan Allen thing is really great. I'm talking about the viewers, like the GeoJSON viewer and things like this, that are really fancy and nice, but for this sort of graphical uses, I think that an interaction that also interacts with the kernel, like Jupyter widgets, is much more valuable than just a viewer, like a file viewer that is completely static.
You're talking about what Jason just said, right?
The GeoJSON viewer that uses the leaflet JavaScript library.
Okay.
Or the Markdown editor. All these are like plugins that are just file viewers talking to the same model.
Okay. Yeah. No, for the things that we want to hit, and I actually want to, now that we're on the call, I want to encourage people to be fairly disciplined and focused about tagging as 090 milestone the things that are really key missing features or bugs or problems that make it not viable to use Lab as an everyday replacement, and that would get in the way of a regular user. And so let's use the 090 tag for that purpose, so that we try to stay focused on that. But if the community starts building these other things, that's great, because it also, we want to get adoption from the broader community of the architecture. And so, but we should remain focused on getting 090 as usable as possible as soon as possible. And I have to say, I'm using it most of the time now as my default environment, and it's getting pretty good. And I actually already have a use case at Berkeley of people who are using it instead of Notebook, because we realized that it solved the problem that the classic one doesn't solve, which is you can do copy and paste of multi-cell copy and paste across notebooks. And for assembling long, complicated educational material, Berkeley is developing a lot of educational material, and that was a use case where lab did something that we can't quite do in the classic notebook. And so they're basically moving back and forth between doing complex multi-notebook editing in lab and then reverting back to the classical one for more day-to-day work.
Just run extensions that does cross notebook.
Yeah, but a lot of people are not constantly installing extensions. And if this is core functionality that we're starting to provide, that's great news.
Okay.
All right. Gino, anything else? That was great.
No, that's it. Thank you, guys. And if you guys have any feedback, go to that repo under the incubator, declarative widgets _explore, and just provide any feedback you guys have.
Okay. Yep, I have it open. So my only note is to remind folks that we will have the Jupyter Hub workshop on Friday, and so we'll record it. We're going to have it. The repo that I linked in there has the basic info. Oh, Jamie and I yesterday did the tests of the video call. We'll be using something called Zoom instead of BlueJeans. Same difference. It's just the one that's installed by default on the big conference rooms here. And I'll add the link. I already have the call info, so I'll add that to the repo in a minute. Those who can attend, great, and those who can't, we'll record and post everything out on YouTube after that. And otherwise, that's it. I'll be gone next week. I'm going to be on actual vacation next week. Darian? Anything that you want to discuss?
Yeah, so there are some issues coming in, and some of them are console related, so I'm looking at those. In particular, I think there's some testing I need to do in IE for the layout of completion widgets and tooltips, and that affects Notebook as well, obviously. But just from sort of anecdotal evidence, it seems people are displeased with Tooltip, which I kind of thought they would be. I was to begin with, but I just wanted something there. So I think I'm going to try a prototype while I'm doing these console changes of having the console panel, which is a panel, actually have a side collapsible thing or some place where the tooltip goes so it doesn't interfere. And
when you say tooltip, you mean the giant big tooltip that pops up when you open parens in that thing?
Yes, that's correct. That one.
Yes. Well, hey, it's our version of Clippy, right?
Well, listen, I asked in multiple meetings, and I specifically said in multiple meetings that I put it there to annoy you, but no one really engaged me with it. So I'm going to make a decision, and maybe that'll annoy people less. And if it does, we'll stick with it. If not, we'll iterate from there. But I was willing to annoy all of you, but now that there are thousands of users, I'm less willing to let it slide. So, so anyway, that's what I'm working on, and hopefully next time we talk, I'll have something that you guys can play with and give me feedback on.
So I've heard a lot of good what IPython is doing for the tooltip. Even if it's a command line thing, they apparently have something that users tend to like a lot, and that we might also try to look at for IPython itself.
And what is it?
IPython.
IPython.
But I would actually say something maybe a little bit different. The way I've been thinking about a lot of these UI decisions as lab begins to congeal is that rather than trying to sort of improve a lot with new ideas, our first order of business is to really get as quickly as possible through the transition. And so one way to do that is to just reuse what we have and make decisions that we already know at least people are used to. And so, for example, for tooltips, I agree that the current tooltip is a little annoying. What we could do is simply take the decision of the notebook, where the tooltip is something that you pop up with Shift-Tab. And since now the console is closer to the notebook than it used to be, we could just follow the same decisions. And that way we're reusing the same code, it's the same pattern, and we can get there with basic decisions that at least people are used to. Later we can think about how to make them different, how to make them better, etc. But that way we're not we don't have to iterate as much right now on decision making, and we can just go with what we've done in the past. Because
I think with the tooltip is one area where there's a couple examples where I don't think we should implement what we have done. One is collapsing output. That UI is not, it's really problematic and difficult. And the other is tooltips. And I think we should have one type of UI that pops up when users are typing.
Yeah, but we have to reach feature parity. We have to move to move forward. And if we start designing new things, we are backtrailing definitively.
But I don't.
For this new UI, we need new APIs that we need to design.
This isn't the new.
What I'm saying is less things. Like, let's just not do tooltips. Let's offer tab completion for now. We still need the pager to work, right? We need question mark to work.
Yeah, question mark has to work.
Yeah, but I don't think if we have question mark and solid tab completion, that tooltip is needed. I've never.
You might be not using tooltip, but a lot of people are using tooltip and are really, as soon as it doesn't work, they complain a lot.
I mean, I spend a lot of time watching people use the notebook, and I don't ever see them using tooltips.
Yeah, because there are
advanced
users use it a lot.
I don't. I mean, that's something I don't think we should try to emulate previously. So I'm all for exploring how we can make it more usable.
I mean, as soon as IPython 5, I mean, during the beta cycle, we got RCs that broke the tooltip. We had issues on IPython repository in minutes.
But IPython doesn't have tooltips.
No, but the IPython API broke the tooltip. The tooltip would basically say object, object in the notebook. So IPython can.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
So if we change the tooltip, you will literally have issues in minutes.
No, I'm not saying. I mean, this is why I'm for improving it.
Yeah, so don't remove it. If you remove it, you will have people say, "Where are the tooltips?"
Yeah, I don't. And this is where, again,
we still have people who get confused when we switched it to Shift Tab to do the tooltip. We still get people filing issues for that.
Yeah,
I have a straightforward fix in mind, and if that straightforward fix, which won't take a lot of time, is not to our liking, we can disable it. But I don't think we need to bike shed forever about it. It's not. I'm not going to go waste a bunch of time on it. We all have better things that we need to work on.
Yeah, and that's my concern right now is that large design explorations right now will maintain the transition period, will continue extending the transition period, and I think our most important, in my mind, my biggest concern right now is shortening the transition period, where we give people what they had, even if it wasn't perfect. We have to have a very MVP mindset right now, and even if what we have is suboptimal, people are using it, and we harm the project more by lengthening this gap than by giving people what they already have. So I understand your concern, Brian, about there are things where what we have is really suboptimal, but we need to be careful about balancing how much effort we put into rebuilding that right now. I'm not saying about it's I'm only talking about a matter of ordering of priorities rather than.
I need to jump in there and say I really disagree with the MVP mindset. Like, we had such a smash hit at SciPy, and it went over so well, and new users are finding it so easy to use, specifically because we did not build this with an MVP mindset. And so as soon as we start taking the approach, well, let's just hack something in there to get what we have running, like, that leads to inevitable technical debt, which will hurt us in the long run. What I'm not saying is that we shouldn't try to be feature parity and that we shouldn't try to make things better and we shouldn't try to be done in a reasonable amount of time. But I would disagree with approaching the problem in that mindset, because in my entire career, I've never seen that work out well in the long term.
I think the other part that really is important to me is the only way to answer these questions is to do user tests.
Yes.
And like, I'm all for, I think we've done that by having the existing tooltip in Jupyter Lab, and people have been frustrated with it. Let's iterate and do more user tests. And I'm fine if that iteration is either closer or further away from the existing implementation in the classic notebook. But I don't think we should somehow shortcut that user testing and implement something that is actually confusing to users. That's the important thing to me, is like, let's actually put it in front of users and get feedback from them.
all of those I am in favor of. My only concern is if we do that and we have the lab/classic split for 2 years from now, that's a problem, right? And so I'm just saying that right now we are in a sort of a ground splitting between our legs situation, and there's a limit to how much we can handle that. Yeah. And I really don't want to forget about that, right?
Yeah, and that's where I think where I'm more concerned is if we spend time on features that are beyond feature parity.
Yep. And that's why just before you joined, I was saying the 090 milestone is there for that purpose. That milestone is there to tag, these are the things that we need now.
Brian, I completely agree. That's exactly what I was saying earlier, that we should not do new features that are not interesting that are not part of the feature parity thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can spend a little bit of time here and there on that stuff, but I think...
What's that?
I think we can spend, like at SciPy, obviously people spent time on, markdown rendering and CSV stuff and GeoJSON. So a little bit of time into sort of high impact new features that the existing notebook doesn't have, that's fine. But in terms of significant amounts of engineering, I think we do need to focus on making the existing set of features designed really well, usable, bulletproof. And to me,
I would add that those high impact features are really nice carrots to get people to move. Like if you remember the problem, like the biggest problem with the Python 3 transition was that there was no incentive for people to actually move over. But Fernando, you were saying before your use case with the copy and pasting cells, and now the ease with which we can extend stuff, like these are all big shining examples and incentives for people to move over. So I think there's a healthy balance between the two.
I would say not just the incentive to move, but that's an easy place for people to have an entry point into contributing to the project, and that's what we saw with people in the sprints. And so us spending a little bit of time exploring at least plugins that are designed to exercise the architecture and helping people come on board, I think benefits the project in the long term. But I agree, you don't spend all your time there. I mean, obviously we have priorities too.
Well, I've got a great plugin to exercise the architecture, which is Jupyter widgets, which have a component in the front end, a component in the kernel, and one on the server. That's a great way to exercise the architecture, I think.
Yep, I agree. I've been exercising the architecture for 3 weeks now.
Can we move this discussion to Friday meeting, because the Tuesday is meant to make a recap, and it's been already a long time since we've been discussing that. So let's. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question about that stuff really quickly? Do we have a list of all the things that we are working toward for feature parity, or are we winging it?
Well, we're trying to curate that on GitHub with this 0.9 and 1.0 milestones. It's a work in progress, though.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to reiterate, that people like tag. If you see something that is of that nature, please tag it as 090, so that milestone remains really, that's our working list.
Okay. Thanks.
I think Thomas, you're next, or Darian, did you have anything else?
No, I think I've said quite enough.
Thomas?
So nothing beyond what's in the hackpad.
Okay, cool. Steve, anything that you wanted to bring up?
I just want to see if there are any objections to consolidating Jupyter.js utils into Jupyter.js services. It's one less dependency, and actually in the process of doing that, I'm looking to get rid of pieces that were in Jupyter.js utils and make them dependencies. So it's just a solid cleanup activity, I think. And Jason's nodding his head. Min already agreed.
I think just about everybody that's using Jupyter.js utils was already depending on Jupyter.js services as sort of the bottom of the stack. So I think that's a good idea.
Okay. And other than that, I'm trying to keep up with Fernando on the 0.9 issues.
Thank you for that. You've been very responsive, and I really appreciate it. I tag things there, and you jump on them. So, and that model, I think, is working well.
Agreed.
Anything that you want to discuss?
I mean, SciPy was really great. It was really great to meet with you guys. I wish I had more time to actually write TypeScript. I didn't write a single line, but it was really nice to see how new contributors like Dan were able to pick up things in a few minutes. And to everybody who did PRs and rebased things at the last minute for Jupyter talk. We had a couple of other talks. We have a talk from Min about NBDiff, how to diff and merge notebook.
You mean NBDime?
Yeah, NBDime. Sorry, I'm tired. Just came back from Austin. It should be already online if you want to see how to use it. And we have also the repository, which is ready. You can just install it, and it's set up Git hooks, and you can see notebooks even with a nice UI. It's not perfect. We need a lot of design work, but we would be happy to get your feedback on that. And Jesse's talk about NB flow and how to do reproducible workflow with notebook was more than full, with two people on each step of the stairs and on the ground just at your feet. It was really, really great. So a lot of interest for this project. This talk is also online. I think both of these talks will have links, and also Brian talks on Jupyter Lab, but you already saw the blog posts on our blog. Would be in the newsletter, most likely that should go out in a few days. I don't remember. And we had a lot of users that did user testing, as you might have guessed from other people talking before me, and they got Jupyter t-shirts. So if you see people with a new t-shirt that you haven't seen before and you put Jupyter big on it, they are the ones who helped us to refine the UI, and so you can just say thanks to them. And that's about it. I will try to dig more things out of my memory in the next few days, maybe to write a blog post about what happened at SciPy.
All right, Jamie.
Next.
Anything that you want to bring up besides what's on the hackpad?
No, I just wanted to give a special shout out to Anna. She did a lot of behind the scenes stuff to prep for SciPy, namely ordering the t-shirts at the very last minute. So I think those were a big hit and brought great visibility to the team. It was great to see you all in person.
And yeah, indeed, thanks again. I mean, thanks to you, to Anna, to everyone who worked so hard for representing the project out there. I heard a lot of good things about it, so I really appreciate it. And anything that you want to highlight besides the notes or discuss?
Still talking to me?
No, it seemed like you were done, Jamie.
I'm done, yep.
Yeah, no, I was asking Jason. I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke.
Jason, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was trying to find the mute button. Nothing other than what's in the notes. Just trying to keep up with everything with Jupyter.
And thanks for giving the presentation together with Brian. That was really great. And Brian, besides what's on the notes, anything that you want to kind of discuss with the group?
Yeah, so just some interesting lessons that have come up with Jake and I releasing Altair, I think are worth mentioning. One is that we've shipped all of our documentation as notebooks inside the Python package. And so if you run the tutorial function in Altair, it makes a copy of those notebooks into your current working directory and uses the file and files objects in IPython to display a table of contents that you can click on and go to those notebooks. I know the notebook-based documentation is an important part of our current grant cycle, and so we sort of wanted to start to explore that. The other is that Altair's JavaScript representation, we're not using widgets, dynamically creates a PNG representation, and that's something that a lot of these JavaScript libraries that have sort of rich output want and need to do so that the visualizations are visible on GitHub and other static sites. In
this case, that's done by the Vegalite renderer, is the one that produces that PNG?
Exactly. The Vega Lite renderer grabs it from the canvas object and then just injects it as a new MIME type in that output. And that's something also that bcubeplot needs, that Bokeh needs. And so in JupyterLab, we probably need to think about a way for one output of a given MIME type to add an additional MIME type to that output. It's sort of
I think that might be possible already if you just, we ask the output area to serialize itself, and you just include that in your serialization.
I would be concerned if we start to move to a server-side saving of.
Right. That's where difficulty comes in.
Yeah.
In which case, we could do it like SageMath Cloud does it, where you send it over to the client. The primary client has responsibility to render the output, and so it sends a rendering back to the server. If the client's not available, then the server starts rendering.
Obviously, the mutations to the model have to be able to come from the client.
Yeah.
And so that this would be one of those cases.
Brian, do you want to maybe open an issue to track this question? And it's almost kind of it's somewhere between the protocol level and the implementation, right? Because there may be some messages that need to be added. I don't know.
I don't think it's protocol level. It's more sort of what JavaScript API is available to JavaScript output is sort of the question.
To update the output, but at least let's make sure that we document this. The reason why I'm thinking of the protocol is because the protocol kind of presents the compute model, and up until now we've described the compute model basically as the kernel produces an output, you bundle it and you send it and you're done, right? And that's it. It's sort of once you've created that little package, you've sent it, it's in an envelope, and that envelope went and it's finished. This introduces a change in that model, in that envelope, that the content of that envelope may get updated client side after the fact, and the final version is not what the kernel produced. So where we describe the description of the core kind of compute model and representation model should explain this. We can prototype how it should work client side until we get something that works well, but that piece it's kind of at the very bottom of the architecture.
Yep. No, and it also leaks more broadly in that other people have JavaScript output, which modifies the notebook object in JavaScript, and so it's a way that people are targeting our existing JavaScript API in a sort of leaky manner that won't work in JupyterLab right now, and we probably want to introduce those things in JupyterLab in a more disciplined way so that we can commit to exactly what JavaScript can be done, or sort of what APIs can be used in JavaScript output.
And what the information flow is meant to be, sort of who does what. What happens in the kernel, what happens in the client, what ends up in the document. Those pieces need to be clearly described.
Yep. Obviously, there's a note there about the user tests. The students did an absolutely fantastic job in organizing user tests at SciPy. They actually had, by the end, over 100 people who wanted to do in-person user tests, the response was absolutely spectacular. And so they're going to be posting the videos on YouTube and then also summarizing the main points for us. And then I don't know if people saw, but at this point we've merged 64 PRs on JupyterLab in the last week. And for a lot of the week, we've been the top trending TypeScript repo on GitHub, even ahead of Microsoft's TypeScript implementation. So great work, everyone. It's been quite a week for sure.
We were even briefly on the overall top page on GitHub.
Nice.
Cool. Awesome work, people. I'm really, really happy. Does anyone else have any other comments or notes?
I was just wondering, if we have hundreds of users, can we ask them to do to do user testing on their hand? Like say, hey, please, if you want to record your screen, try to install JupyterLab, and here is the script. Can you send it to us, and we'll try to improve. You can talk during that.
So the plan is to spend some time addressing the usability problems we found at SciPy and do another round of user tests and take advantage of those volunteers who were willing and do it online, like you said. It was really encouraging, though, to see that response.
Great, great. Any other notes, folks, from anyone? So last but not least, I want to make sure that we introduce a new face for the public meeting, even though many of you did get to meet Mike, who's here with us today. So Mike is starting in the fall as a new postdoc. He's kind of part-time with us right now while he finishes his PhD here at Berkeley, and will be very soon working full-time with us. I hope you had a good experience at SciPy, Mike. We'll have a chance to debrief later. And so I want folks to kind of welcome Mike to the team, and he'll be with us, kind of focusing a lot on the more documentation, publishing, notebooks as literature part of the project, and kind of integrating that into kind of the education and academic publishing pipelines questions that we had in the grant proposal.
Thanks. It was great, and I'm happy to be a part of the team.
Cool. All right. Well, I think Jamie, you have control of the right button.